So my tripod's broken. That's why you got this really upwards angle. So in the market for a new tripod. What we're doing today is probably a little unconventional for a lot of you car enthusiasts, some of you guys who are just motorheads and just build engines and drive cars fast and do burnouts and, you know, drift stuff. But anyways, a lot of you guys who are car enthusiasts probably have never seen something like this before. So what we've done is we've converted the old heater box fan core unit. It's basically a box, it's a plastic box, and it has the fan, it has the heater core, and it also has 3 series of airflow flaps. So what these flaps do is they direct airflow to different certain parts of the car. One's for the defrost, it goes up to the windshield. The other's for the footwell, it brings air down to the feet area of the cargo passenger area of the car. And the third, in this 944, is for the front sort of mid, like face air vents. So in the stock 944, the early cars, what they had was, and I'm gonna get a little salty on this, the engineers probably got either in a rush or a hurry or lazy, and they probably looked around the shop and said, how can we move these flaps easily and simply without spending too much money? Oh, here's a bicycle over here, let's see what we can use from this. So they literally, it looks just like it. It's these cables with sheathing on the outside from what you would see on like your shifter mechanism for your bicycle. And it's literally just a cable hooked up to a lever that's on a rotating sort of mechanism with little divots in there, so you can kind of maybe sort of stop it. If it was new, it might work actually pretty good, but over time water gets inside that cable, as it does with bikes. It rusts and it's super hard to move. So when I got the car, it was really hard to move some of these levers, and just overall wasn't a really good setup. So what I did was I ripped out that entire assembly, got rid of all of it, ripped out all the wires, all the cables. And what I've done is I've installed metal gear servos that you can control with a microcontroller or an Arduino for some of you tech guys. Some of you tech guys are going to say, oh, Arduinos can't provide enough current, yada yada yada. Well, you know, they can provide enough current to move the flaps in your airplane, your RC plane, your, you know, radio controlled tanks, and oh, it's not going to be reliable. Well, we're going to find out. So I've taken some metal gear servos that are being controlled from our Arduino, and I 3D printed some gears and some housings that I've hot glued and super glued and used epoxy to attach to the heater unit of the car. And so the Arduino is going to control these servos, and the servos will turn gears that will in turn move these flaps to control the direction of the air that's going inside the cab. So I'll throw a screenshot up of what I'm talking about right now, but basically I spent probably around 6 months developing this. So what we did was we took originally some GM flap actuator parts, and it was literally just a DC motor with some gears. It was the same thing as a servo, but just super complicated with 5 pins instead of 3. And I tried to get those to work, and I used some transistors to control high and low, but those things were just hunting for a position because I had a potentiometer on the back attached to the shaft, and the way I coded it was just not probably a good way to do it. So I thought it was good, I thought it was going to work, and I was ready to install it, and then I tested it, and it just wasn't working. And no matter what I could do, no matter what wires I soldered, it wasn't working. So we threw that idea out, and I just went with something simple. I went with the servos, and the thing with these is they're sealed, they're mass-produced, they're simple, they're easy, and they're reliable. So we're going to use those. Those are already installed in the unit. My center console unit has linear potentiometers instead of rotary potentiometers, whatever you tech nerds use. And these ones are commonly found on like soundboards for like DJs. They have volume control and whatnot for sliders. So we've got those. I hacked them a little bit, I hacked the knob a little bit so it would fit. Printed some knobs, they look pretty dope, as you probably have already seen in the B-roll. Hot glued those to the back of the faceplate of the HVAC control plate. and then I wired those into the analog pins of the Arduino, so they take in basically a resistance and they convert that to an analog signal and then convert again to a number, and then I've taken that number, mapped it to a value, and then the servos will turn based on that value. So what I need to do is I need to calibrate the Footwell servo because that flap just flaps around all over the place no matter what you do. So I need to move the slider to where I want it to be, and then I need to go inside and make sure the flap is in the right position before I glue the servo in. No big deal. But what I also need to do is I need to take and clip the wires on that flat connector that used to go to the center console. So we're going to take that, clip the wires, crimp on. Where did I put those? Alright. More non-insulated crimps. More heat shrink tubing. So we're going to put those in the back, and then we're going to, oh shit, I need to go inside and get, for my 12-pin Gyro connectors, there are specific terminals that I have to use, so I'm going to have to go inside and get those, and then I'll crimp those on with, where did I put it? I'll crimp those on with this. It's a ratcheting crimp tool for terminals, so we'll use that and crimp those on. Make sure we get the rubber isolator on there, no big deal. Then what I'm going to do is find a common 12 volt positive and ground for the car and then hook up my power supply. Now it's only a 30 amp power supply, so it's not going to be powering any injectors or spark plugs or coils or anything, so I'm not worried about the amperage part of that. This is only just to power the fans and the center console unit and the servos and the Arduino, and that 30 amps should be enough. I mean, 12 times 30, that's what? 12 times 30, yeah, that's 360 watts. That's plenty for what I'm going to be doing today. So we're going to do that, and then we may even try to power on the fuel pump. I need to figure out how I'm going to capture the fuel. So maybe not today, but Mike's supposed to have the wiring harnesses this Wednesday. So who knows when those will get shipped out. Hopefully, you know, crossing our fingers, knock on some wood, they'll be shipped out next week. Then we can install the wiring harness, and then we can install the friggin' intake manifold back there, hook up the fuel line and the fuel injectors, and see if this thing will start. I need to get oil and coolant first though, so that's on my other to-do list. I also need to friggin' mount those AC lines behind something that doesn't get hot, so still a few things to do, but we're getting there. So let's move inside the cab and we'll do some crimping and some wire work, and you know, I'll see if I can mount you guys in a place that you can see well enough. But you know, my tripod is a little janky because the up and down, this part right here that goes up and down, it's kind of stripped, so in the market for a new tripod, as I said earlier. See what happens. Here's what we got going on. I know it doesn't look like much, but back here, so this is what we have as a setup. I've got those two relays control which fan is being powered on. That 12 to 5 volt buck converter right there, that powers, I think, the Arduino. No, actually, that powers the main current for the servos. So the servo hot goes from that, and there is also a vacuum switch solenoid back there somewhere, and I need to get the vacuum hose out. But yeah, let's finish up the wiring on this, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so we've got our pin connectors, we've got our rubber grommets, we have our fancy dancy wire stripping tool that strips and then you can release the wire and it does cool stuff. It's called a speed stripper. We have needle nose pliers, and we have our ratchet and crimp tool. So we also have, because I couldn't find the schematic I made, a Haynes repair manual that has wiring diagrams in the back. So I'm going to flip to the back, figure out which ones are which, and then get those hooked up to the 12-pin connector. And then what I'm going to do is figure out a solid 12 hot that I can connect my power supply to, probably to ignition, or I might even hook one up to the battery main. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, we'll figure it out, and then I'll get videos of this doing its thing and blowing shit all over the cabin, etc. What I'm really looking for is the switching action between this fan and the evaporator fan in the AC unit. So that should be interesting to see, and then flap actuation, etc. So, alright, let's get to it. Old connector is now out. No more. All done. Had enough. Alright, so we finished wiring up the center console, and it doesn't look that much different, but you can tell the crappy stock chassis wires are now onto the new connectors, so that's good, that's all set. Now what we have is my 12-volt power supply. We have this positive lead going to pin 30 on the, it's like an ECU relay, DME relay, whatever you 944 nerds want to call it. And then we've got the negative up to ground spot that's on the horn. So, camera's still low, so I'm going to hook it up to the wall, and then we'll hook this up, and I'll be down there to make sure that nothing spills, and if it starts to fill up my drain can, then I'll unplug it. But I'm pretty sure there's not much fuel left in this thing, because the last time I drove this was with my buddy Joe. We were going to take this and my 4Runner to Augusta to get my 4Runner had to have body work done, but this thing died right outside the house, so we freaking pulled this back up into the yard, and then a couple hours later I was driving my 4Runner and the transmission went in that, so that was a bad day, and I'm pretty sure that I was on my way to get gas in this thing that day, so I don't think there's a lot of gas left in this. So, but you know, we'll see. So, let's get to it. So in order to have this camera going while I plug my fuel pump into the wall, I had to turn off my shop light, so it's gonna be a little dark. Actually, I'll get my phone so that you guys can watch and see what happens, and hopefully hear what happens, because when I plug this in, hopefully you'll be able to hear the fuel pump. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, but we'll be underneath the car watching for fuel to come out of the pressure line that I've hooked up with an AN line, and I'll also be able to check for leaks at that AN fitting, so it's kind of a win-win. Now, my pressure line is like right up here. You guys can't see it, but I've got my hand on it right here. So with any hope and luck, I should be able to plug in the 12-volt supply, and that should, I mean, it's probably going to spill all over my control arm, but Yeah, I'll just aim it this way, and then I'll have the fuel friggin' drain pan. Here's to hoping my car doesn't catch on fire and nothing bad happens. Huh. Maybe I've got it plugged into the wrong one. Let's check the relay. Alright. Take two. Let's see what happens. Nothing? Alright, let me get my voltmeter and see if I can figure out which one it is. Alright, plot twist. We're going to send 12 volts straight to the main wiring harness and then turn the ignition key on, and then we're just going to jump pins 30 and 87A. Alright, I know y'all are going to say this is super sketch, but here it is. 12 volt and ground. Little tiny ass dinky wires, one to the main 12 volt leads, and those are going to get redone because those are super sketch. And then that one's just hooked up to the ground on the chassis. So, alright, let's give this a shot, see what happens. Oh yeah! Hear that? You see that? Yeah, buddy! All that nasty fuel coming right out. Yeah, buddy. Oh, that smells horrible. Yep, this stuff is definitely bad. Really glad we're getting this out of the tank. We're not running it through this engine. It's the first time this pump has ran in just around 2 years. It's good to see that it's pumping it right out. Oh. You good there? Looks like she's almost empty. Either that or she's having issues because it's on ramps. Come on. Here you go. Come on. I still hear it. Okay, that's good. Cool. Alright. So we got a good amount of the fuel out. Yeah, you can smell that. That's just nasty. I'm gonna undo the relay jumper and then see what else works now that we have the 12 volts hooked up. See if I can get these lights to work. Alright. Now. I mean, what certifications do you really need to build cars on YouTube? At Hoonigan, at Rob Dom, at Beers for Build, at literally friggin' everybody who's building cars right now. If you're a famous YouTuber and you're watching this, sup, give me a shout out. Boost Brothers Garage, Casey Putsch, Motion Auto Raceworks, Boosted Boys, PFI Speed, you know, the usual suspects.